Thank you very much, Nidhi, for that very kind introduction. It falls on me the very pleasant duty of introducing all the panelists for today's panel discussion. And I'm introducing all of them in the beginning so that when we interact, everyone is aware of who is involved. And I'm introducing them in the sequence in which they will be speaking. So the first speaker is Dr. Swati Chavan. She is the professor of the Department of Medicine at Lokmanya Tilak Municipal Medical College and General Hospital. That's also commonly known as Sion Hospital, and which is, since everyone knows us at Sion Hospital, we've titled this panel discussion as the Sion Hospital Experience. She is, of course, a recognized Medical Council of India postgraduate teacher and has more than 50 national and international publications to her credit. But the most important thing is she has been at the helm and the forefront of the core team which treats COVID in Sion Hospital. And in the past 15 months, she has treated over 3,000 patients. We have Dr. Sujata Baveja, who is the professor and head of Department of Microbiology, one of the most dynamic and illustrious faculty members that Sion Hospital has. She's the core WHO TB core member in the WHO TB elimination group. She's the core group member in the Medical Council of India for Vision 2015 for improving undergraduate medical education. She has been the core group member of the NACO team for writing HIV testing manuals. She is the vice president of the Hospital Infection Society of India and the joint secretary of the Hospital Infection Society of the Mumbai Forum. And she is the coordinator and assessor of National Medical Commission for undergrad and postgraduate medical education. And she is a teacher par excellence, and she has more than 52 publications in index journals. Welcome, Dr. Baveja. Dr. Sudhir Pawar is the professor and head of Department of Pharmacology. He is the editor-in-chief of the Bulletin on Adverse Drug Reactions. He's the coordinator of the National Program of Pharmacovigilance. He's the core member of the expert panel for review committee of the Pharmacovigilance Program of India. And he is the SCC member for the clinical trial approval by the DCGI Government of India. Has multiple national and international publications and is also the secretary of the International Review, Institutional Review Board, or the Institutional Ethics Committee of Sion Hospital. Dr. Anagha Joshi, this is Dr. Anagha Rajiv Joshi. So for the ENT surgeons who know Anagha Joshi as an ENT professor, there we also have another Anagha Joshi. This is Dr. Anagha Rajiv Joshi, who is the professor and head of Department of Radiology at Sion Hospital. She's been a committee member appointed by the government of Maharashtra for capping HRCT chest during COVID-19. She has trained abroad in fellowships in neuroradiology, both in Chicago and in Philadelphia from the premier institutions there. She has more than 90 publications to her credit and has made multiple national and international presentations. She is on the editorial review board of the IJRI and the JPGM. And very interestingly, she is an excellent table tennis player, and she has represented India in the World Veterans Table Tennis Tournament. Welcome, Dr. Anagha Joshi.
Thank you.
Dr. Kshitij Shah is the senior assistant professor in the Department of ENT at Sion Hospital, a very valuable and good colleague of mine. And he has been a visiting scholar at the Department of Cranial-Based Surgery at the University of Pittsburgh, USA. He was chosen for that fellowship by the American Academy of Otolaryngology and Head Neck Surgery Foundation. His special fields of interest are endoscopic sinus and skull-based surgery, airway reconstructive surgery, and head and neck oncosurgery. He heads the oncosurgery program, which runs in Sion Hospital. And he has been trained by Dr. Sultan Pradhan himself. And I have the pleasure of saying that he has, before he became my colleague, was my student and one of the star students, because he placed first both in the MS ENT and was the gold medalist in the DURL exam. Welcome, Dr. Kshitij Shah. And we have Dr. Akshay Nair, who is an oculoplastic surgeon and is a visiting consultant at Sion Hospital. And his contribution to Sion Hospital in the amount of time that he comes to Sion Hospital is immense. And we are very glad to have him on our faculty, especially during these days of mucormycosis. He has trained in oculoplastic surgery and has done fellowships both in LV Prasad Eye Institute in Hyderabad, as well as the New York Eye and Ear Infirmary in Mount Sinai, USA. He is a star in the firmament of the US scenario of medicine because he's won numerous awards at the American Academy of Ophthalmology, right from 2013 all the way up to 2019 before COVID put an end to his travels. And we hope to see many such international awards, Dr. Akshay Nair, in the future. Welcome to the panel. And thank you so much for all of you being here on the panel. And I look forward to a very vibrant discussion. May I request Dr. Swati Chauhan to start with her lecture.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I am Dr. Swati Chauhan. I'll be presenting my experience of medicine department with post-COVID mucormycosis and what precautions we should take and when to diagnose, how to treat. This is a picture of one of my patient, and I think everybody is aware that mucormycosis can present like this perforation, and you can see specifically the black fungus, which is commonly known by every person in the world, I might say, and specifically in Maharashtra. So what are the predisposing factors for this? When we are treating COVID patients, specifically when the patient has uncontrolled diabetes mellitus, treated with immunosuppression like steroids, treatment with immunomodulators, new drugs, which has really helped us in the treatment of COVID patients. But yeah, certainly they have some these these side effects, or we can say effect on immunomodulators like tocilizumab or itolizumab. Some patients require prolonged ICU stay for the treatment of COVID pneumonia, COVID ARDS, and they are on long-standing oxygen therapy, especially by nasal bronchs. They have comorbidities like post-transplant or malignancy. Some patients are given empirical treatment as antifungal because they go into sepsis subsequently. So along with antibiotics, we give antifungal treatments like voriconazole. They are on prolonged hospital stay, unable to eat, or on NIV mask when they require long-term rice tube feeding. Humidifier in bottle has some contamination if they are not frequently changed. Prolonged use of higher antibiotics and chronic liver disease and kidney diseases as comorbidities. So when you suspect in specifically COVID-19 patients, when they are diabetics and immunosuppressed, that they might have mucormycosis, they have sinusitis, they complain of nasal blockage or congestion or nasal discharge. Many times they have one-sided facial pain, numbness and swelling. There might be some blackish discoloration over the bridge of nose and palate. Sometimes they have just toothache or loosening of tooth, or on the movement of jaw, they have pain or swollen gums. Many have visual complaints like blurred or double vision, may have along with that fever, skin lesion, ptosis. Many times they have loss of vision, or sometimes if they have respiratory mucor, then they have chest pain, pleural effusion, hemoptysis, or worsening of respiratory symptoms. If they have CNS involvement, then they might have stroke or seizures. So there are some warning signs and symptoms in summary, like there might be pain or redness, fever, epistaxis, headache, cough, shortness of breath, bloody vomiting, or altered sensorium. So what are the important points in management? The management should be with a committee of infectious disease specialist, microbiologist, histopathologist, intensivist, neurologist. ENT specialists definitely play very important role. Ophthalmologists definitely have much important role. Along with dentists, surgeons and radiologists, we can't forget the role of radiologists because without them, the diagnosis is absolutely impossible. Along with it, we have to have control of diabetes and diabetic ketoacidosis. If the patients are on still steroids, we have to rapidly decrease them or discontinue it. And some patients are on some immunomodulating drugs, oral drugs like baricitinib or tofacitinib, that we have to reduce. So basically, the practical protocol will be baseline HbA1c control, strict blood control of blood sugars and diabetes ketoacidosis, rational use of steroids in high risk groups, adequate humidification, isotonic saline nasal pouch, or maintain oxygen delivery system. Specifically, I will speak about the medical management and brief give the importance of drug regimes. About detail of drugs, Dr. Sudhir Pawar is going to cover this part. So, the medical management will be the most important is control of diabetes and control of diabetic ketoacidosis. Along with that, the main treatment of medical is amphotericin B. But when we give amphotericin B, we have to check the potassium level and kidney levels, serum creatinine levels. Amphotericin B, initially crystalline is preferred because it has more benefit, but because of its toxicity, severe toxicity causing hypokalemia and renal failure, liposomal amphotericin is preferred. The dose of liposomal amphotericin is 5 to 10 milligrams per kg. We give for 2 weeks for all the patients, and then subsequently we add to posaconazole from day 1, 300 milligram 2 times a day, 2 tablets first day, and then OD for next 2 weeks. All these patients will be continued on oral posaconazole 300 milligram for further 4 to 6 weeks, and it will be decided with clinical resolution of symptoms and radiological stabilization. We have to treat patients and monitor very properly with radio imaging and microbiological subsequent swab taken and the effect of the drugs. Sometimes if the patient is not tolerating amphotericin B, the isoconazole can be added, and the treatment for isoconazole should be continued for next 3 to 6 months. Along with this, I am specifically going to give your outline of how to manage decay, because many of the ENT people, they are not very much aware about the management of decay. So there are 4 main categories under which decay should be managed. First, should be correction of fluid loss or intravenous fluid supplementation, correction of hyperglycemia along with insulin, correction of electrolyte disturbances, specifically hypokalemia, and correction of acid-base balance. And along with that, if the patient has any concurrent infection, like in mucormycosis, it might be fungal sepsis, or otherwise, if the patient has any other infection, it should be treated simultaneously. So, for the correction of fluid loss, it is a very critical part in the treatment of diabetic ketoacidosis. You have to give adequate fluid first to replenish the fluid loss or replenish the dehydration. Unless you correct dehydration, the patient is not going to come out of decay or hyperglycemia. So, initial first 1 hour is very critical. You have to administer at least 1 to 3 liters of isotonic fluid in 1 liter. Once the patient slightly becomes dehydrated, then you can give 1 liter in next hour, and then 1 liter following 2 hours. Subsequently, we have to monitor patient CVP and hypernatremia also. If the patient develops hypernatremia, then we have to convert isotonic saline into 0.45 saline. Insulin therapy is must, but before starting insulin therapy, we have to ensure that the serum potassium levels are at least above 3.3 milliequivalents per liter. Because if you give insulin, the patient is tend to develop hypokalemia, and that will be again difficult for us to monitor the patient. So initially, when the patient has hyperglycemia and potassium levels are above 3.3 milliequivalents per liter, intravenous regular insulin, that is the rapid acting insulin, is preferred, and it should be given as IV bolus initially as 0.1 unit per kilogram, followed by continuous infusion of regular insulin 0.01 units per kilogram per hour. So if the patient is around average 50 kg or 60 kg, then you can give 5 units of insulin IV immediately, and then you can input 5 units into the 50 units in 1 pint and give that 50 units over 1 hour. Subcut insulin can be given in uncomplicated decay, but specifically when we have this severe infection, we have to give IV insulin first and infusion first, and then subsequently convert into subcut route when the patient sugars goes below 200 milligram and patient is able to eat. Potassium supplement is very important, and initial potassium level should be more than 3.3 before you start insulin. So if the patient potassium level is below 3.3, then potassium chloride can be given along with saline. The dose can be given up to 20 to 40 milliequivalents per hour, that is 10 to 20 ml of potassium chloride can be added into saline and given slowly over period of 1 hour. When the potassium level becomes more than 3.3 and less than 5.3, then you can slightly reduce the dose of potassium chloride. You can give around 20 milliequivalents in each liter of fluid and then simultaneously give other fluid replacement. Simultaneously, we have to monitor potassium levels and it should not go beyond 5.3. Correction of acidosis in diabetic ketoacidosis again is a controversial thing, and usually in decay we should give bicarbonate therapy only if the pH is less than 6.9. At that time we can give 100 milliequivalents or 100 ml of soda bicarb in 40 ml of with saline water. Should be administered over 2 hours and should be repeated if the pH remains at the lower than 7. Strict glycemic control is very important in patients with COVID-19. Systemic steroids should be only used in patients with hypoxemia. Oral steroids is totally contraindicated. Systemic steroids, if they are used, if it is really mandatory to use systemic steroids, we have to control blood sugars and the patient should be given insulin to control the blood sugar levels. If patient requires steroid, it should be in the lower dose. We should not give more than 0.1 milligram per kg per day of Dexa, and that too we should limit for 5 to 10 days. So that's all I want to tell you about COVID patients, and the care should be taken for COVID patients with mucormycosis.
Thank you so much, Swati. Dr. Chavan, for this very apt and precise presentation. We will be going on to the next speaker, but I have one question that we can take between the two, and that is that there's been a question as to whether prolonged and continuous steam inhalation could predispose to mucor.
Yes, now it is saying that prolonged steam inhalation might reduce the normal flora of the nasal cavity, and actually mucor is present in normal individual also. So it can enhance, this growth can enhance, and it can actually predispose evidence of mucor in the patient. That is what has been nowadays the research is going on.
Thank you. So I'd like to tell all our viewers that at the end of all the lectures, which are, we will be taking an extensive question answer session where all these questions will be addressed. And so we will not be taking too many questions between the panelists.